Today, let's dive into an intriguing urban legend called the Kisaragi Incident, which took place in 2004, about 19 years ago. Back then, Japan had a very popular forum called 2channel. On that forum, there was a post asking people to share strange and unbelievable things happening around them. Most of the replies were casual conversations. But at 11:14 p.m. on February 8, 2004, the 98th message under the post appeared, and this message sparked one of Japan's most famous urban legends. A girl wrote, "Sorry, it might just be my imagination, but I've just boarded a train from a private railway company, and something feels off. I take this train to work every day, and usually, it stops at a station every 5 minutes. Between the major stations, it's only about 7 or 8 minutes, but today, it's been 20 minutes, and we haven't stopped once. In my train car, there are only 5 other people, and they're all asleep." People in the comments asked if she had boarded the wrong train, suggesting she might be on an express train that skips many stations. 15 minutes later, at 11:29 p.m., the girl replied, "I think I might be on the wrong train. I'll check and update you guys." Some users advised her to go to the front car and ask the conductor or look for a train attendant, while others suggested checking the driver's cabin. One user pointed out that if the driver were unconscious, the train could keep moving endlessly. Later, the girl updated, "I went to check the front, but the driver's cabin is blocked by something like frosted glass. I can't see inside, and when I knocked, no one responded. I haven't seen any train attendants either." At this point, someone asked her which train line she was on and where she boarded. She responded, "I'm on a private railway in the Shizuoka area. I boarded at Shin Hamamatsu." With this information, users quickly deduced that she was likely on the Shizuoka private railway, a very old line that had been in operation since 1927, starting at Shin Hamamatsu Station. However, the girl then realized the train had entered a tunnel, something she had never experienced before, despite taking this route daily. She thought she might have gone past her usual stop. Shortly after the train exited the tunnel, it began to slow down. At this point, the girl, who had been using the name Anonymous like most people on 2channel, changed her username to Hasumi. At 12:23, Hasumi posted, "The train has stopped at a station called Kisaragi. I've never heard of this station before. Should I get off?" Some users advised her to stay on the train until the final stop, but others encouraged her to get off and investigate. Ultimately, Hasumi decided to get off. She described the station as completely deserted, no staff, no passengers. In Japan, there are some stations in very remote areas with no staff, known as unmanned stations. Hasumi said she planned to cross to the opposite platform to catch a train back, but there was no timetable posted. She tried to use her phone to check for return train schedules but couldn't find any information on the station. While Hasumi checked the schedule, many users online also tried to look up Kisaragi Station without success. Just as she was asking everyone whether she should get back on the train, it left the station, leaving her alone at this mysterious platform. It was around 12:30 a.m. I want to highlight something here. Back in 2004, while phones could take pictures, there wasn't really a way to share them online, especially not on 2channel. So throughout this incident, no pictures were ever shared. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, when users tried to search for Kisaragi Station, they couldn't find any information about it. Even if you search for it now, you won't find anything. The station doesn't seem to exist in Japan. 6 minutes later, around 12:36 am, Hasumi posted again, saying she couldn't find any information about the train or the station. She had searched around the platform and the station, but couldn't find a single person to ask for help. So she decided to leave the station and try to find a taxi to get home. She thanked everyone for their concern, and it seemed like she was about to end her post. But less than 5 minutes later, at 12:41 am, Hasumi sent another message. I've left the station, but there's nothing here. No taxis, no lights, just an isolated station in the middle of nowhere. What should I do? One user suggested calling 104, which is Japan's directory assistance, to get the phone number of a local taxi company and have them send a car. About 7 minutes later, at 12:48 a.m. Hasumi wrote, "I called my parents and asked them to come pick me up, but they've never heard of Kisaragi Station either. They said they'll check the map and come find me. I'm starting to feel really scared now." A few moments later, a user replied, "I've checked online as well, and there's no such thing as Kisaragi Station. Are you sure you read the name right? Please double check." Others suggested that the station should be near Shin Hamamatsu, but no one could find it. One person mentioned that in 2004, Yahoo was more commonly used than Google in Japan, so they were searching on Yahoo for information. Another user said there was probably a public phone nearby that might have a phone book where she could find the number for a taxi company. At 12:53 am Hasumi posted again, "I've looked, but there's no public phone around here. No one got off the train with me, there's no one here. The station is definitely called Kisaragi, I'm sure of it." Then, 4 minutes later, at 12:57 a Mavent sent a chill through the entire thread. A user wrote, "I just looked up the kanji for Kisaragi, and one of the results shows it's the character for demon. I had no idea that Kisaragi could also be pronounced as demon in Japanese." At 12:59 am, someone asked an important question. Does the sign at the station show the names of the previous and next stations? This was a common feature on Japanese station signs. Even if it wasn't the last stop, the signs usually showed the previous and next stations. People thought that if they could figure out those names, they might be able to pinpoint where she was. But Hasumi replied with something strange. The sign only says Kisaragi Station. There's no indication of the previous or next stations. Finally, one user suggested, "Since the station exists, that means there must be people living nearby. Walk along the tracks and maybe you'll come across some houses or shops." Hasumi agreed. "You're right. I was a bit panicked earlier. I'll walk along the tracks and wait for my parents to call. I just tried using my phone's GPS to find my location, but it gave me an error unable to determine position." She added, "I really want to go home." At this point, users began asking more questions. Is there really nothing around you? What do you mean by nothing? Can you see anything at all? Tell me what you see, someone asked. A few minutes later, at 1:18 am Hasumi replied, "There really is nothing around me, just an endless wasteland with mountains far off in the distance. Still, I think if I follow the train tracks back, I should eventually reach somewhere. I want to give it a try. Thank you all for your concern. Some of you might think I'm making this up, so I won't say much for now. If anything happens, I'll ask for your help again." Her tone from the beginning seemed cautious, with no hint of fabricating a story. But it felt as though everyone in the thread was pushing the story forward, adding a strange tension. One person replied, "It's okay, just make sure you stay safe. Be careful if you come across any tunnels." Another added, "Since there's nothing around, your phone might lose signal suddenly. Maybe it's better to wait at the station." However, someone quickly countered, "It's an unmanned station. Once the last train leaves, the lights go out and it becomes completely dark." Another user chimed in, "Isn't it even darker along the tracks? Maybe staying at the station and waiting for help or daylight is the smartest choice." Some advised her to conserve her phone's battery, reminding her it could be her last lifeline. By 1:30 am Hasumi updated the group. "My dad just called back. He couldn't find Kisaragi Station on the map either. He told me to contact the police." Hasumi continued, "I really didn't want to call the police, but I decided to ask them for help." This message sparked even more anticipation as everyone in the thread waited to see what would happen after she contacted the authorities. At 1:55 Hasumi returned, I called 110, the police hotline, and did my best to explain where I am. But the police said the place I'm describing doesn't exist. They think I'm making a prank call. Hasumi added, "I'm really scared now," and hung up quickly. At this point, she mentioned that she was still walking along the train tracks, trying to find her way back. People asked, "Are you sure there's nothing around you?" No landmarks or anything distinct. At 1:57 a.m. Hasumi responded, "There really is nothing around, but I hear something. It sounds like drums. And maybe a bell? Like the sounds you hear during a festival or ritual." Shortly after, she wrote again, "I'm getting more scared. I don't even dare look behind me anymore. I'm just running forward as fast as I can." Messages from the forum poured in. "Run faster, don't look back." Others disagreed, urging her to return to the station, saying, "That's the safest option." Hasumi replied, "I'm too scared to look back. I want to return to the station, but I can't bring myself to face it." Then at 2:09 a.m., she sent another chilling message. "I heard a man's voice calling from behind me. He said, 'Hey, don't walk on the tracks, it's dangerous.'" Thinking it was a railway worker or station staff, she turned around and saw about 10 meters away an old man. But he only had one leg. Just as she thought to approach him, he disappeared. Hasumi wrote, "I'm so terrified I can't move." People urged her, "Don't look back again, keep going. The tunnel should be close now." At 2:13 a.m. Hasumi wrote, "I can't move anymore. I can't walk or run. The sound of the drums is getting closer." Most people in the forum told her to stay put and wait for daylight or to carefully follow the tracks. But one user, to everyone's shock and frustration, suggested, "You should gather your courage and walk toward the sound of the drums. After all, if there are drums, someone or something must be beating them." He didn't exactly say what it was, just that something was there. Everyone immediately felt uneasy and attacked him, but he urged them not to get worked up. He pointed out Hasumi's messages saying, "She's no longer in our world, but it seems she doesn't realize it yet. If you don't acknowledge that you're dead, you can't move on to the next life. So you need to accept the truth." The forum members began to suspect Hasumi might actually be dead, as if she had entered another realm without knowing it. Hasumi quickly responded, "I'm definitely still alive. I just fell a little while ago, and the wound is still bleeding. Even my shoe's heel broke off, and I'm holding it right now. I don't want to die." Then, 23 minutes later, at 2:35 a.m. Hasumi left another message. "I just called home. My dad said he'll call the police for me." She mentioned that the drumming sound was getting louder. One user advised, "I think you should get to the tunnel as fast as possible. If you make it out, you should be safe." It seemed like people were now seeing the tunnel as an important gateway, perhaps separating two worlds. "But before you enter, make sure to check the tunnel's name," someone else suggested. "There's usually a name written above. If we know the name, we can help identify your location, and the police will need it too." 10 minutes later, at 2:45 a.m. Hasumi updated, "I finally reached the tunnel. There's a sign above it that says Isunuki, but this tunnel doesn't exist." She added that the drumming was getting even closer. "I'm about to enter the tunnel. If I make it through, I'll let you know." Everyone urged her to stay strong, and more than 20 minutes passed. At 3:10 a.m. she wrote, "I'm almost out of the tunnel, but I can see a figure standing faintly near the exit. At least I see someone, so I feel a bit more relieved." People were alarmed. "At this hour? Someone standing at the entrance? Don't go near them, it's dangerous," they warned her. Then, at 3:20 a.m. Hasumi posted again, "Sorry for worrying everyone. He's a kind person. He said his car is parked nearby, and he'll drive me to the closest station. I'm really grateful." But the forum wasn't convinced. "Ask him where you are," someone urged. Hasumi replied, "I asked, and he said this place is called Hina." She paused, then added, "But that can't be right. Hina is a real station, an unmanned one, but it's over 100 kilometers away from where I boarded the train at Shamu. That's way too far. The chat now focused entirely on the mysterious man. Many people were suspicious, saying, someone appearing near the tracks at this time is definitely not a good sign. Be very careful. 6 minutes later, at 3:37 Hasumi sent a worrying update. He's taking me into the mountains now. He says his car is parked there, but I don't think there's any vehicle up ahead. I tried talking to him, but he won't respond. 7 minutes later, at 3:44 Hasumi wrote her final message. My phone battery is about to die. I think I should try to run away when I get a chance. He started talking to himself, but I can't understand what he's saying. Just in case, I'm going to turn off my phone now. That was the last anyone ever heard from Hasumi. 19 years have passed since then. Her first message appeared at 11:14 p.m. on January 1st, and her final message was sent at 3:44 am January 9th, a span of 4 hours and 30 minutes. Since that day, the story of Kisaragi Station has gone viral. Everyone has been searching for the station, but as it turns out, there is no record of a station named Kisaragi anywhere in Japan. However, the story didn't end there. 7 years after the Kisaragi Station incident, on March 23, 2011, just 12 days after the Great East Japan earthquake, a post appeared on 2 Channel titled A True Horror Story. Someone left a message saying they had also ended up at Kisaragi Station by mistake. This person shared that 6 years earlier, in 2005, he had taken a train from Fukuoka to Kyum, a station in Kyushu, not Shizuoka. He explained that he had been engrossed in reading during the ride. When he looked up, he realized everyone around him was fast asleep, which gave him an eerie feeling. I got goosebumps, he said. Looking out the window, he saw the train crossing an old iron bridge before stopping at a station. He clearly saw the sign reading, Kisaragi Station. Unlike Hasumi's experience, he was able to see the stations before and after Kisaragi. The station before was called Yami, meaning darkness, and the one after was Katas, though he wasn't sure what that name meant. While he was tempted to get off and explore, Kisaragi wasn't his destination, so he stayed on the train. After a while, everything seemed to return to normal, and when the train reached the next stop, it was Kyum, the station he was heading to without any stop at Katas. After his post, people began piecing together more details about the station surrounding Kisaragi. On June 30th of the same year, 2011, another message appeared. This time, someone claimed to be Hasumi herself and offered a conclusion to the mysterious story. Hasumi wrote that when she and the man from the mountains got into his car, he drove further into the mountains. However, shortly after, a blinding light appeared in front of them, forcing the car to stop. The driver began muttering to himself and she felt terrified. Out of the light, she saw a figure approaching the car and knocking on the window. This frightened her even more. The man inside was mumbling to himself while a stranger outside was knocking ... The stranger outside spoke to her, asking, "Why are you here? You can't stay here. Leave immediately." When Hasumi turned back, the driver had vanished. So she got out of the car, and the stranger urged her to run toward the light. Filled with fear, she ran toward it, and upon crossing through the light, she found herself at a train station near her home in broad daylight. To her surprise, her parents were standing there, waving and calling her over. Once she got in their car, she realized it was now 2011. 7 years had passed. Her parents hadn't noticed that she had been missing for several years, and it seemed like she had lost all memory of that time. For Hasumi, it had only felt like a little over 3 hours, but in reality, 7 years had gone by. She expressed her confusion, saying she had no idea what had happened, but was deeply grateful and wished everyone health and happiness. Some people analyzed this message and compared it to Hasumi's original posts. They found that the writing style was quite different. Hasumi's earlier messages were nearly devoid of punctuation, while the new one used it regularly. Also, this message had been posted on a blog rather than on 2channel, where her original story had unfolded. Because of these differences, many people suspected that this was not the same Hasumi who had disappeared years ago. Then, 6 more years passed. In 2017, another man claimed to have mistakenly arrived at Keita's station, the stop after Kisaragi. He was also on a train, dozing off, when suddenly, he opened his eyes and saw the station sign, Katasu. He had never heard of such a station before, and the atmosphere on the train felt strange. At that moment, he considered getting off, but chose not to. After a while, everything seemed to return to normal, as if he had slipped back into the real world. However, he vividly remembered that the first thing he saw upon opening his eyes was the sign for Katasu Station. The prevailing theory now is that Kisaragi Station might either be a complete fabrication or part of a parallel universe. In certain extraordinary circumstances, one could accidentally step into a different time and space, perhaps temporarily, or for some permanently. So once you find yourself at Kisaragi Station, how can you survive and return to reality? People have compiled a few essential rules, and as long as you follow them, you should be fine. The first rule is, don't fall asleep on the train. Second, if you find yourself at Kisaragi, Katasu, or Yami stations, never get off. Even if you do, stay inside the station and don't venture out. Another important rule is to avoid tunnels at all costs. If someone speaks to you, don't respond. And most importantly, never look back. These guidelines might sound familiar, as they echo themes from mythology and near-death experiences. In many myths, you're often warned not to perform certain actions in order to return safely to the real world. For example, in myths, it's often said that if you look back, you could turn to stone or face some other doom. In Japanese mythology, there's a strong emphasis on not eating anything in another world. Once you eat, you can never return. And in near-death experiences, one of the most common warnings is not to cross a river. That river represents the boundary between the human world and the afterlife. And once crossed, there's no coming back. Ultimately, if this is all just a made-up story, I believe it's an incredibly well-crafted one, with excellent pacing and suspense. What about you? Do you think Kisaragi Station truly exists? Or is it just a clever story to entertain netizens? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.